If anyone can hear this, you need to stay with me. Don't hang up. Don't tune out. Not now. This is Station Voicecast Emergency Broadcast, or what's left of it. My name is... Doesn't matter. Names are air, and I'm almost out. You're hearing me from somewhere inside what used to be the weather room. Except weather doesn't matter anymore. Air does. Or the lack of it. I can feel it, too, in here. Thin. Like breathing through cloth. My lungs, they don't feel right. And if you're hearing this, I know you feel it where you are. You know something's wrong. You can taste it. Metallic, sour. Like the sky's rotting from the inside out. Stay with me. I'll tell you what we know. What they won't say. What the air's trying to hide. Started with the coughing. No warning. Just coughs on the street, in offices, in schools. Sharp, dry. Like something was scraping the backs of people's throats. I heard it right here. Through this mic. Someone called in about a subway conductor who collapsed at the controls. Said the train just rolled into the station, doors hissing open, and the driver slumped sideways, still buckled in. By the second hour, the calls poured in. The hospitals filled first. Some doctors thought it was a chemical spill. Others thought it was an attack, gas released into the air, but no alarms sounded. No smoke, no smell, just air that wasn't air anymore. I tried to stay calm. You know, the whole trusted voice in a crisis routine. But outside the station windows, I could see it too. People staggering, faces pale. Some pressing their hands to their chests like they couldn't pull the air down deep enough. By the time I called the emergency line myself, they weren't even answering. Just static. And then my own breath started catching. Now I'm here. Talking to you. The only thing keeping me breathing is this mic. And knowing someone, anyone, is hearing me. We opened the emergency line. Just like we were trained to. Stay calm, take calls, spread official information, except no official information came. Nothing from the state, nothing from federal, nothing from the meteorological center. Just silence. So the calls kept coming, but all we got were voices choking through static. A woman screaming from a locked bathroom, saying her kids couldn't breathe. A firefighter coughing so hard he dropped the radio mid-sentence. One nurse whispering, because even whispering used too much air, that her whole ICU had gone quiet. No monitors beeping, just patients lying still, their lips gray. I wanted to offer comfort. That's what radio's supposed to do, right? But all I could say was, stay with me. Don't hang up. Then one of the calls. I still can't explain it. It came through faint, like it was bouncing off some broken tower. It was a paramedic, or maybe just someone who stole a paramedic's radio. They said the air itself was changing, heavier, denser, like gravity was crushing it closer to the ground. They said they saw birds falling out of the sky mid-flight, wings stiff like paper. Then the line cut. Another call followed, but it was just breathing. No words, just someone breathing. Faster, faster, until it cut off too. I'm trying to piece this together. What you've heard, what I've heard, what we've all felt in our lungs since this began, but none of it fits into anything sane. The first call said it was a chemical leak, some industrial accident spilling into the sky. Then someone said they saw military planes circling right before it started. No markings, flying too low. By the time the scientists broke their silence, they sounded just as lost as the rest of us. Some said solar activity spiked, stripping part of the atmosphere. Others swore it was a natural air inversion, trapping pollutants near the ground. But none of those things explain why the air feels stolen, like something ripped it out while we were sleeping. There's even a rumor running through the emergency band, someone claiming the oxygen itself is being harvested, drained into space like we're just a leaking tank. Nothing more than a supply line for something waiting up there. I don't know how much of that to believe. But here's what I do know. I'm breathing less air every minute. You are too. That's not theory. That's the only truth left. And if there's anyone out there still listening, anyone with real answers, call me. Break in. Take over this frequency before there's no one left to hear you. I need you to hear this because every word I speak costs me air now. The room feels smaller, like the walls themselves are breathing in with me, taking their share. Even the mic, this ancient piece of gear I've trusted for years, seems hungry for what's left in my lungs. I want to keep talking, but talking means dying faster. And silence? Silence means leaving you alone out there. I can't do that. Not yet. I know you're out there breathing just like me, counting each inhale, wondering how long it'll last. I need you to know we're still here, still holding on, even if it's by the thinnest thread of air, even if we're down to whispers. Stay with me. Please, don't go silent, not yet. I wish I could tell you how this ends. I wish I could say the air will come back, the sky will clear, and we'll laugh at how scared we were. But I can't. The static's getting louder. The signal's falling apart, like it's suffocating too. Maybe this is the last time you'll hear my voice. Maybe this is the last time anyone hears anything. I'll stay here as long as I can. I'll keep talking until my breath runs out, or the power fails, or the air itself forgets how to hold sound. If you can still hear me, hold on. Don't hang up. Don't turn me off. Let me be the last voice you hear, so neither of us dies alone. If you're still hearing me, stay on this frequency, because I finally reached someone. It took almost an hour to break through the static, but I've got a line patched into what's left of the research network. It's not clear. Voices keep dropping out, but they're there. A few scientists holed up in whatever labs still have power. You should hear them. Not calm voices explaining facts. These are panicked scientists, terrified of their own data. They said this isn't local. It's not a spill. Not some isolated industrial accident. Whatever's happening, it's everywhere. One by one, monitoring stations in every time zone reported the same thing. Oxygen levels collapsing like dominoes, air vanishing from whole regions in minutes, leaving nothing but sky too thin to breathe. Then the line cut out. When it came back, someone different answered, a voice so tight with fear they could barely form words. They said the atmospheric sensors didn't malfunction. They flatlined, as if the sky itself had been hollowed out. I asked them if this was some freak coincidence. Solar flare, volcanic gas burst, something science could still name and tame. The voice gave this awful laugh, like the kind you hear when someone realizes they've already lost. And then the line went dead again. If you're hearing this, don't count on answers. Not from them. Not from anyone. We're running out of explanations faster than we're running out of air. But I'm not shutting this frequency down. Not yet. Not while there's still a chance someone out there knows the truth. The next call came from someone older. I could hear their breathing through the line, slower, heavier, like every word needed extra air they couldn't afford to lose. They called themselves a climate historian, one of the few left who still studied ancient weather patterns, the ones written down before satellites took over. They said the air itself has a memory, layers upon layers of atmosphere built up like tree rings, recording every volcanic eruption, every industrial age belch, every nuclear test. And nothing in the planet's entire history matches what's happening right now. They said for oxygen levels to drop this fast across every continent at once, it would take gemachi, either a planetary scale chemical event, which no one detected, or a deliberate manipulation of the atmosphere itself. Not from inside the Earth, but from above it. I asked them if they meant some kind of geoengineering experiment gone wrong, maybe an attempt to fix the climate that punched a hole straight through our air supply. But they wouldn't answer. They just kept saying, This was never in the models. This was never supposed to be possible. I could hear something in their voice, something worse than fear. It was recognition. Like they knew somehow that this was expected, not by the public, not even by most scientists, but by someone, somewhere. The line cut again. Another fractured silence, swallowing truth before it could land. I sat here staring at the mic, thinking how absurd it all sounded. The air, the very thing we've taken for granted every second of our lives, collapsing like a wave crashing back into the sea. If this was some ancient cycle, the sky breathing in and out over millennia, we would have seen it before. But we didn't. Because this isn't nature turning against us. This is something else. Stay with me, because there's more, and if I stop talking, that silence will be all that's left. They told us to wait for help, to hold tight until emergency teams arrived with portable oxygen tanks. Some of you probably saw the trucks, the uniforms, the bright canisters marked clean air supply. That's what they called it, clean air. I've got reports, not rumors reports, from people who use those tanks. At first, the air tasted metallic, like pennies pressed to the tongue. Then came the dizziness, the trembling hands. Some described sudden, violent seizures. A few said the air burned on the way down, like breathing in broken glass. And then nothing. Quiet. No heartbeat. No breath. Just silence. One caller said her husband only took 2 breaths from the canister before he collapsed. His eyes stayed open, wide, shocked, like he saw something in the air that she couldn't. She left the tank next to him, still hissing softly, like it was leaking something far worse than oxygen. I called the emergency hotline for answers, but it's the same silence on every frequency. No recall orders, no official warnings. Just silence. And the knowledge that the very air meant to save us might be the thing killing us faster. I know some of you out there have these tanks in your homes right now. Maybe you've used them. Maybe you're breathing from them as I speak. If you are, listen carefully to your own breath. Does it still sound like you? I've been holding it together for hours. Or days, maybe. Time bends when you count breaths like currency. But I can't do this anymore. Not like before. Not like the old days, when the scariest thing I read on air was a storm warning. I'm scared. If you couldn't hear it before, I need you to hear it now. Every time I think I have an answer, every time some expert or official voice crackles in with an explanation, the silence swallows them whole before they can finish. Every voice drops out, leaving me with nothing but static in my own breathing, which doesn't even sound like me anymore. I used to think the worst thing a broadcaster could face was dead air. Seconds ticking by with no sound, no voice to fill the void. But this silence has weight. It presses down, heavier than the sky itself. It's the sound of everyone realizing, at the same time, that no one is coming to save us. If you're out there, if you're still breathing, still listening, you need to know, I'm with you. I'm scared too, but we're not done yet. There's still one more call you need to hear. Just before my last line broke, a new voice came through. Thin, shaking, the kind of voice that spent too many hours alone with bad knowledge. He said his name, but I won't repeat it here. Names are air, and air is too precious to waste. He called from inside one of the remaining atmospheric research labs, the kind buried under universities, forgotten until disaster knocks. His breath was ragged, like he was breathing through a straw, but he kept talking. Because he said this wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mystery. It was predicted. Years ago, he said, a handful of researchers ran simulations. Climate models meant to predict extreme scenarios. Most were routine. Rising seas, melting ice, that slow death everyone saw coming but ignored. But one model broke from the rest. It predicted a rapid atmospheric inversion, something so catastrophic it was dismissed as a glitch, Oxygen draining out of the air faster than any natural event could explain. No volcanoes, no solar storms, just something reaching down, pulling the air away like a magician, snatching a tablecloth. They buried the model, called it impossible, career suicide to even mention it, but someone didn't forget. He tried to tell me more, something about a classified experiment, something that happened months before the collapse began. Something launched into orbit, something meant to save us that instead pierced the sky and left the wound open. But before he could explain, his breath hitched. The line choked with static, and I swear, in that static I heard another voice whispering over his, and then silence. I'm still here, still breathing. But after that call, every breath feels borrowed. Stay with me. There's more you need to know. I opened the lines 30 seconds ago. They haven't stopped ringing since. If you're still out there, if you still have enough air to speak, you're not alone. Every line is full, every frequency bleeding into the next. Some voices are clear, others just static, laced with breathing. Fast, shallow, desperate. One of the first voices was a man in his car, windows rolled up tight, a wet towel pressed against the vents. He said the air outside felt heavier than the air inside, like the sky itself was leaning down on the hood. He said his wife was in the passenger seat, but she hadn't moved in 20 minutes. He wasn't sure if she was sleeping or suffocating so quietly he hadn't noticed. The next call was a nurse, still inside a hospital, but the generators were failing. She said they tried to seal off certain wards to preserve oxygen, but the moment they closed the doors, the patients started gasping harder, like the act of sealing them in somehow made the air thinner. Now she's stuck between two hallways, not sure which one has enough air to survive the next hour. I can't mute any of these calls. I need you to hear them, even if they're hard to bear, because their breath is your breath now, and every word they speak might be the last they get. Stay on the line. There's more. The next voice belonged to a woman in a downtown apartment, one of those modern buildings with sealed windows, climate-controlled air. She thought it would be safer inside, where the air was filtered and the doors could keep whatever was outside out. She said the first hour felt safe, maybe even lucky. No wind, no dust, no smell. But then her breathing grew shallow. Not fast, not panicked, just hollow. Like the air in the room had been used up faster than the room knew how to replace it. She stuffed towels under the door, opened the fridge for cold air, held her face near the bathroom vent, hoping it might still pull something in. But it didn't. She said the air just sat there, heavy and unmoving. Every breath felt like rebreathing the one before. Her voice shook when she said it. The walls weren't keeping the danger out. They were keeping it in, turning her apartment into an airtight tomb where every breath pushed her closer to the edge. The next caller said the same thing, and the next after that, homes, offices, hospitals, every sealed space turning against the people inside, air recycling itself into thinner and thinner versions until there's nothing left but whatever sits between the lungs and death. If you're hearing this from inside a sealed room, listen to me carefully. I know sealing yourself in feels safer, but it might be a trap you can't unseal. Some of you are breathing in your own deaths right now, and you don't even know it yet. Hold on. There's more. And it only gets worse. The next voice started strong. Too strong. A young man, maybe late teens, shouting into the phone like his voice could punch through the silence itself. He said he was in a stairwell, moving floor to floor, trying to find a pocket of air that didn't burn his throat. He told me about the others, the ones he found slumped against the walls, some holding inhalers, some with towels wrapped around their faces. None of them spoke. They couldn't. They were breathing too fast, like they were chasing air that wasn't there. And then, in the middle of describing the last face he saw, his own voice stopped. No static, no disconnect sound. Just breathing. Slower, slower, And silence. The next call was no better. A woman said she was standing in her kitchen, phone propped between her shoulder and ear while she wrapped a scarf around her child's face. She kept apologizing, not to me, but to the child, whispering, "I'm sorry the air hurts. I'm sorry I can't fix it." Her breath hitched. The child coughed. Then, nothing. These aren't dropped calls, they're fading calls. People disappearing into silence the same way the air disappeared from their rooms. And I need you to understand. It's not panic killing them. It's not fear. It's the air itself turning thinner than any body knows how to handle. If you're still breathing, say something. To me, to whoever's with you, even just to yourself. Because silence isn't safety. Silence is just the first step toward never breathing again. And if your line goes quiet before mine does, I'll remember your voice. Stay with me. I'm not finished yet. There's something strange about the way voices stick with you when the world is ending. I've taken more calls than I can count, voices blending into static, names lost the second they're spoken. But a few of them, I know them now. Not just as callers, but as people. There's the nurse from the hospital downtown. She's called twice. Once from a hallway, filled with gasping patients, and again from the roof, when the air inside turned too thin to breathe. She said the sky felt heavy up there too. But at least the silence wasn't crushing her between walls. There's the truck driver somewhere on the interstate, engine off to save fuel. Windows cracked just enough to keep the glass from fogging. His voice is steady, almost calm, like talking to me is the only thing keeping his panic from spilling over. He describes the other vehicles, some empty, some with bodies slumped behind the wheel. Drivers who sealed themselves in too tight and forgot that air doesn't wait. And then there's the single father. He called once, hours ago, from a basement laundry room where he and his daughter were hiding. I didn't expect to hear from him again, but he just called back. He's alone now. His daughter, the air took her first. He stayed on the line long after he stopped talking, just breathing, not ready to let go of the only voice left that knew her name. I don't know how much time any of them have left. I don't even know if I'll hear them again. But they're my people now, voices I'm holding on to like oxygen itself. And if you're out there, if you're still breathing, you're one of them too. Stay with me. There's something else you need to hear, and it's worse. The last call I took came from a voice so small, I thought the line had glitched. At first. A child? Couldn't have been more than 6 or 7. No parent on the line, just this trembling whisper, calling in from a bedroom closet where they said the air was quieter. They told me they saw something no one else had seen, or at least no one else had survived long enough to talk about. They said they were lying in the backyard, looking up when the sky turned off, not slowly, not like a sunset, just off, like someone flipped a switch. They said they saw a hand. Not a real hand, but a shape. A shadow with fingers reaching down through the clouds, pressing something invisible closed until the air itself stopped moving. They asked me if the sky had hands everywhere or just above their house. I didn't have an answer. All I could do was listen as their breathing grew softer, slower, until the line went dead. Not with static, but with silence so deep it felt like the sky itself was holding its breath. If you think this can't get worse, you're wrong. There's more. And it's coming next. I wasn't going to say anything at first, not until I could verify it. But at this point, what's left to lose? A package showed up outside the station earlier today. No return address, no courier, just a battered envelope, taped shut like someone was trying to keep whatever's inside from breathing. Inside were documents, stamped classified, in that blunt, official typeface we're all trained to ignore. But this wasn't military troop movement or disaster response. These files were different. They were about the air itself, the atmosphere we're all choking on right now, and what the government knew before any of us felt. It scraped the backs of our throats. I'm holding those papers in my hands right now. They're shaking, not because I'm cold, but because every word I read makes it harder to breathe. Somebody risked everything to get these to me. That's the only reason you're about to hear what was never meant for your ears. And I swear to you, if you knew how far back this goes, how long they've known, you wouldn't waste another breath trusting any official broadcast ever again. Hold on, I'm opening the first file now. I'm reading directly from the first page. It's dated 12 years ago, long before any of us ever noticed the air thinning. The document describes an internal study, something called Project Adrestia, a global atmospheric monitoring program tracking irregular oxygen fluctuations. 12 years. That's how long they've been watching this collapse crawl toward us, and they said nothing. The file lists anomalies detected over the Pacific first, sudden micro drops in oxygen saturation, dismissed as instrument error. By year 3, the fluctuations spread inland, invisible air pockets where oxygen dipped just low enough to trigger fainting spells, minor strokes, and unexplained infant deaths. The public explanations blamed heat waves, poor ventilation, even stress. By year 6, internal memos show full atmospheric instability was already considered inevitable. Oxygen wasn't just leaking, it was being displaced, pushed aside by something they couldn't name, but knew wasn't natural. They argued over public disclosure. They chose silence. I'm holding the memo right now, signed by officials you've seen on every crisis press conference in the last decade. They knew. While we were breathing easy, they were already calculating how much air the public could afford to lose before panic set in. They called it the soft collapse window, a polite term for how long it takes for a population to suffocate quietly enough to avoid riots. I wish I could tell you this was the worst of it, but there's more. Page after page, the files lay out the contingency plans. Not for us, right? Not for the public, but for them. Somewhere beneath cities we'll never set foot in, there are oxygen shelters. Pressurized vaults stocked with clean air reserves, climate controlled to simulate the atmosphere before the collapse began. They're not for hospitals. They're not for children. They're not for people calling into this broadcast, begging for help. They're for the elite. Hand-picked lists of political leaders, corporate executives, top military brass, names I could read to you right now, but it wouldn't matter. You already know who they are. The people who always have a backup plan, not for saving the world, but for saving themselves. The files even include capacity estimates. The shelters aren't infinite, so they ranked people by value. Influence, power, usefulness. Regular families. Families like mine, like yours. We didn't even make the backup list. The air we're breathing now, the air they left us with, it's what they calculated we could survive on for as long as we stayed calm. That's why they lied. That's why they told us it was pollution or a weather anomaly. They needed us quiet while they sealed their doors, and now those doors are shut. We're out here, breathing the scraps they left behind. And they're down there, sipping oxygen like champagne, waiting for the rest of us to disappear. But the air isn't the only thing they miscalculated, because I'm still here. And now, so are you. There's a file in front of me, one marked internal use only, secure line transcripts. It's not a report. It's a recording. Not a press briefing or emergency statement, but something darker, a rehearsal. I'm going to read some of it. You need to hear what they sounded like. The ones who decided how much air you deserve. One voice says, oxygen rationing is preferable to public panic. Messaging should emphasize temporary atmospheric disturbance. Avoid using the term collapse. Another voice responds, public focus must remain on personal responsibility. Masking, home filtration, voluntary conservation. There's no fear in these voices, no urgency, just calculation, like they were rationing office supplies, not the air we all need to stay alive. The next section makes it clearer. Phase 1. Frame oxygen reduction as an isolated meteorological event. Phase 2. Introduce safe air zones, gradually limiting population movement. Phase 3. Selective sheltering of critical assets, leadership, defense, corporate infrastructure. Critical assets, that's what they called themselves, not people. Assets. And you? Your children? Your neighbors? They didn't even get a phase. They were outside the plan, expected to fade quietly while the real assets sealed themselves inside. The last voice on the recording says something I'll never forget. The goal is not to save everyone. The goal is to ensure that those who matter most have enough air to rebuild. If you're still breathing, it's not because they planned for you to survive. It's because you're stubborn enough not to die on their schedule. At the very bottom of the envelope, beneath the classified memos, the contingency plans, the scripts they never got to read on air, there's something else. A single sheet, unmarked. It's a fragment torn from a larger report. No title, no agency stamp, just 2 words at the top. Orbital incident. It details a classified launch, something fired into orbit just over a year before the first atmospheric disturbances were detected. Whatever this was, it wasn't a weather satellite or a research probe. It was something designed to interact directly with the atmosphere. The purpose is blacked out, but one sentence remains. Intended objective: localized climate intervention and oxygen harvesting. Harvesting. That word, it's not a metaphor. The file describes technology capable of drawing oxygen directly from the atmosphere into orbiting reservoirs, effectively draining the sky itself. A backup air supply for whoever controlled the satellite. Or a weapon if used at scale. The operation had a code name, Project Aegis. The shield meant to protect us, they said. But something went wrong. The file references a containment breach, an atmospheric siphon that wouldn't close. It kept pulling, draining more than intended, until the feedback loop spiraled out of control. This wasn't just a natural collapse. It was us, reaching too far, trying to rewrite the sky itself, and tearing open a wound that the earth couldn't heal. There's one last note scrawled by hand, in the margin. Different ink, rushed handwriting. Like someone added it at the last second before slipping this into the files. It says, there's no off switch, only silence when it's done. I don't know who wrote that, but I know what it means. We didn't just run out of air. We reached up and stole it from ourselves. Stay with me. Because now we know who's responsible. And knowing means they might be listening. If you've been listening since the start, you know this frequency's been holding steady. I've been on this wavelength for hours, pushing my voice through static and silence, hoping someone out there is still breathing long enough to hear me. But just now, a minute ago, something cut in. It wasn't a caller. It wasn't an emergency broadcast override. It was something else. A voice where no voice should be. Rough, distorted, buried under static, so thick I almost thought it was just feedback. But then it spoke my name. Not my call sign, my name. The one I've never said on air. This voice. It came from somewhere outside the grid, like it wasn't tied to any tower I can trace, and that's impossible. Every open band I've monitored is either dead air or emergency chatter. Nothing else. Nothing except this. The voice didn't identify itself, just said, "You're late. They've already started." Then silence. For 5 full seconds. Nothing but my own breath and the hum of dead frequencies. And just when I thought it was gone, the voice came back. This time, it said, "Don't trust what they showed you. I've seen the real files, the ones they buried under the ocean, not in the ground." I asked who they were, what they meant. No answer, just coordinates, a set of numbers repeated 3 times. And then the frequency collapsed into static so loud I had to pull my headset off to keep my ears from ringing. Whatever that was, it's back now. I can hear the carrier wave under my voice, like a second breath whispering beneath every word I'm saying. Stay with me. I'm going to open the line. And if they're still there, we're all going to hear this together. I've patched them through. The line's unstable. The voice flickers in and out. But I'm recording everything, just in case neither of us makes it through this. They're calling themselves Signal 9. No rank, no real name. Just a voice that sounds like it's been awake for days, maybe longer. Signal 9 says they've been broadcasting from an old weather relay, piggybacking on obsolete satellites, systems the government forgot to shut down because no one thought they'd matter again. They claim they've been watching this collapse unfold long before we ever knew. Before the coughing, before the sky thickened, before the air turned against us. And they say they know exactly why it's happening, because they used to work for the people who started it. Signal 9 says the atmosphere didn't collapse on its own. It was triggered, deliberately destabilized by technology that was never supposed to leave the testing phase. They call it atmospheric bleeding, a process where localized oxygen siphons create microvacuums in the sky, pulling air out faster than it can replenish. They say it started with one experimental satellite launched under the cover of a routine climate study. But once they saw what it could do, once they realized how easy it was to turn air into a weapon, they launched more and more until the atmosphere was stretched so thin it tore. Signal 9 says they tried to warn people. But every time they broke into a broadcast, the frequency was jammed. Every time they posted the files, the servers went dark. They've been screaming into the silence for months, hoping someone would finally stay on the line long enough to listen. And now that someone is us. Stay with me, because Signal 9 isn't finished. The line crackles, but Signal 9's voice pushes through. Hoarse, like they've been speaking into broken air for too long. They say they worked inside the project once, before they were cut loose, before they were labeled unstable, before their clearance vanished like the air itself. They call it Project Aegis, a global atmospheric manipulation system launched under the guise of advanced climate stabilization. On paper, it was the solution to everything: rising temperatures, carbon saturation, extreme weather. A shield, they called it. A technological atmosphere to reinforce the natural one. But here's what no one outside the project knew. Aegis didn't just regulate air, it could move it, funnel it, shift it, even bleed it off if necessary. They built it to drain excess greenhouse gases directly into orbit, but the system didn't know how to stop. Once the siphons opened, they started pulling everything. Not just carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, the air itself. Signal 9 says they warned the engineers. They begged the supervisors to shut it down. But the project had momentum, billion-dollar contracts, global political promises, a public desperate for climate miracles. The system was too expensive to fail. So they lied. They called the first oxygen drops normal fluctuations. They called the second wave statistical noise. By the time they realized the siphons had cut too deep, it was too late. The sky was leaking faster than they could patch it. And the only option left was silence. Signal 9 says they saw the memo. The one that ordered the full media blackout. The one that turned our atmosphere into a state secret. And now? Now? We're all breathing the price of that silence. Stay with me. Because what comes next is worse. I ask Signal 9, the question every survivor has been asking since the first breath turned sharp: where did the air go? They laugh. Not because it's funny, but because it's the wrong question. The air didn't go anywhere. It was taken. They say Earth wasn't just bleeding oxygen by accident. Someone, somewhere, flipped the system into reverse. Instead of stabilizing the atmosphere, the siphons turned into straws, sucking the air out and redirecting it into orbital reservoirs. I ask why. Who steals the sky? Who hoards air and space while the world suffocates? Signal 9 says the answer isn't simple. Because the ones who started it didn't even know what they were building. The original plan was to store emergency air supplies in low orbit, a backup in case of future climate catastrophes. But once the system proved it could extract air directly, someone else took control. They say a handful of governments, maybe more, realized oxygen could be weaponized. You don't need bombs when you can just turn off the sky over enemy nations. You don't need occupation forces when you can make air the most expensive commodity in history. What we're breathing right now, this thin, metallic-tasting ghost of air, this is what's left after they took their share. The orbital reservoirs are still up there, holding enough oxygen to rebuild the world twice over, if they ever decide to give it back. But they won't, because air is power now. The nations who hold the reservoirs hold the future. Everyone else, we're just lungs they've already written off. I ask Signal 9 what happens when the siphons drain the final breath. They don't answer. They just say, look up. If the stars flicker tonight, it's because they're still drinking. The line cuts, not with static, but with a sound I can't describe. Like air folding in on itself. Like something hungry. If you're still listening, take a breath. If you can. Because now you know who owns your lungs. The line is still open, but I haven't said a word. Not yet. Because I don't know what to say. Everything Signal 9 just told us. The siphons, the orbital reservoirs, the idea that air isn't disappearing but being stolen. It sounds insane. Not just fringe theory crazy. Madness. The kind of story you tell when you've been alone too long. Breathing your own fear until it feels like oxygen itself. And yet, parts of it match the files I've seen. The ones I've read to you, the classified operations, the technology they swore didn't exist, the timeline they've buried under years of official silence. I wanted to dismiss it. I wanted to call it exactly what it sounds like. A delusion wrapped in desperation. But here's the thing. The more I replay the pieces in my head, the more they fit. Why else would the government prepare oxygen bunkers years before the first atmospheric warning ever reached the public? Why else would the official scripts they buried describe exactly how to lie to us while we suffocate? And why, after all of that, does the air still taste wrong? Metallic. Processed. Like something that's been handled too many times before it ever reached our lungs. If this is madness, it's their madness. The kind born inside black budget labs and clean room war rooms where survival is just another commodity trade. I'm about to ask Signal 9 for proof. Something I can show you, something they can't explain away. But before I can, the line shifts and everything changes. There's a sound sharp and sudden. Not static this time, but breathing. Fast, ragged, like someone's running uphill with lungs half full. Signal 9 tries to speak, but the words break apart between gasps. I ask what's happening. No response. Just more breathing. Sharper now, wetter. Like every inhale is slicing through a throat that's already raw. Then, the unmistakable sound. The sound we've all heard at some point since this began. Choking. That desperate, helpless gasp when there's air right there, but your body can't take it in. Signal 9's voice cuts through just once, strangled and broken. They found me! The line collapses into static. Not random, but pulsing. Almost rhythmic. Like the frequency itself is gasping for breath. I try to call them back. Nothing. Only silence. If you're still with me, keep breathing. I don't know how much air we have left, but now we know who's stealing it. And if Signal 9 was telling the truth, someone's still listening. There's no point hiding it anymore. If you've been listening, you've probably heard it in my voice. I'm breathing harder. I can't help it. The emergency tank I've been using, it's almost empty. Every time I speak, I can feel it pulling at my lungs, like each word costs more air than the one before. The air inside this room isn't much better. It's thin, used. I can taste it now, stale and metallic, like breathing through a corroded pipe. I told myself I could outlast this, that if I stayed calm, rationed my breath, kept the words short and careful, I could stretch this tank long enough to keep talking until help arrived. But there is no help. The lines to emergency services went dead hours ago, and the people who were supposed to save us, they're sealed underground, breathing air they never planned to share. That leaves me here, fighting for every word I give you, trading oxygen for truth. And I can feel my own voice thinning out, like my body is learning the same lesson everyone out there already knows. When the air turns against you, even breathing is a betrayal. I'm not stopping yet. But if my voice sounds strange, if you hear me gasping between words, know this. I'm not choking on fear. I'm choking on the truth they left us with. Stay with me. The walls are starting to breathe. The first time I heard it, I thought it was just the static, a trick of signal drift, some random pulse folding in on itself. But it's not the static, it's the walls. Every few seconds I hear it, this faint inhaling sound, like the building itself is trying to breathe with me. At first I thought it was my own breath bouncing back, an echo inside the mic, but the rhythm's wrong. It's faster when I'm quiet, slower when I talk, like it's listening. That's not even the worst part. Somewhere under that breath, I swear I hear music. Not the emergency tone, not the looped safety warning, but old jingles, commercials from before all this started. A car dealership ad we used to play every hour. The theme song from the morning show. And worse, my own voice, cheerful, introducing the weekend weather like it mattered. It doesn't make sense. The emergency playlist shouldn't be playing underneath this broadcast. And even if the system glitched, those files shouldn't still be here. We wiped all that when we switched to emergency mode. I can't shut it off. I can't turn it down. It's just there, under everything I say. Like a ghost pressing up from the past. The air's running low, and the thinner it gets, the clearer those phantom sounds become. I'm scared to stop talking because I'm afraid of what I might hear when I go quiet. And if the walls are breathing, what happens when they stop? I used to sit in this same chair, same mic, same coffee-stained console, and read school closings in winter. That was my biggest responsibility. Tell the town if the roads were too icy for the buses. Play the ad for the hardware store selling discount snow shovels. I used to take requests, love songs for anniversaries, birthday shout-outs, missing dog reports. People called to ask about the weather, not because they were afraid of the sky, but because they wanted to know if it was picnic weather. There was a time, and it feels impossible now, when the biggest emergency I ever announced was a boil water notice after a pipe broke near the high school. I've been sitting here remembering those calls, the silly, harmless, beautifully pointless calls that filled this frequency when air was still just air. A kid once called to ask if the moon was really made of cheese. I said no, and he cried because he wanted it to be true. His mother called back later to say he forgave me, but only if I played his favorite song. I did. Twice. I miss those calls. I miss the version of myself who took them. The me sitting here now, gasping between words, listening to walls that breathe back at me, I don't know who this is, but I know one thing. I would give what's left of my breath for just one more call about a lost dog. I need to believe. The world can still be that small. Stay with me. There's more. I'm not ready to go quiet. I don't know how many of you are still out there. I don't know if this signal even reaches anyone anymore or if I'm just shouting into a sky that's already empty. But if you're hearing this, if you're still breathing, I need you to do something for me. Stay with me, please. Not for the news, not for the updates, not even for the truth. Just stay. Because if you go quiet, if this frequency fades to nothing but static, I'm scared the silence will swallow me whole. We've all been holding our breath, waiting for someone to tell us it's going to be okay, that the air will come back, the sky will heal, the sun will rise, on a world that still remembers how to live. But no one's coming to say that. It's just us now. A handful of survivors chained together by static and sound. If you're out there, don't turn the dial. Don't disappear into whatever thin air is left. Even if you don't call in, even if you just listen, knowing you're there means I'm not dying alone. And if you're with someone right now, your family, your neighbor, a stranger you found, coughing in a doorway, hold on to them. Breathe together. Stay awake. Even if the air tastes like pennies and smoke, even if your chest feels too tight to speak, stay awake. Because the second we stop talking, the second we accept the silence, we've already died. Please, stay with me. If I'm the last voice you hear, I want to know someone's still out there to hear it. Don't leave me alone in this. Just now, while I was talking, something happened. I didn't touch the board. I didn't open the emergency line, but I heard it. Soft at first, so faint I thought it was my own. Caught in the mic, but it's not. This is different. Slower. Like someone half asleep or trying not to be heard. The emergency call line lit up, even though no one dialed in. That's impossible. The board logs every incoming number, but the screen showed nothing. No location, no ID, just a pulse, like the line itself was alive. I asked if anyone was there. No answer, just breathing. In, out, slow, deliberate, not panicked, not desperate, almost expectant. Like whoever, or whatever, was on the other end had been waiting a long time for me to finally go quiet. I don't know who's listening. Maybe no one. Maybe everyone. Maybe it's just the sound of the air itself, remembering how to breathe when there's no one left to fill it. But I'm not closing that line. Not yet. Because if the air itself has something to say, I'm going to hear it. If you can still hear me, this might be the last time you do. The station's emergency tank just hit its final marker. I've been watching the gauge all night, trying not to think about it, telling myself there's always just a little more left if you breathe slow, if you stay still, if you speak in half sentences in silence. But silence doesn't fill lungs. The air in here is thin enough to hum when I talk, like the sound is pressing through water. Slower, heavier. I'm not sure if that hum is coming from my own ears or the walls themselves. The walls have been breathing with me all night. And now they're starting to hold their breath too. I want to tell you I'm not afraid, but that would be my last lie. I'm terrified, not of death, but of what comes next. Not heaven, not hell, just silence. Absolute, permanent, not a breath left silence. When this frequency goes dark, there's nothing after it. No emergency override, no backup generator, humming to life, just static, and then not even that. Just space, a dead, airless space where this voice used to be. I wanted to make it longer. I wanted to hold on until someone called in to say they found a safe zone, or cracked the code on the siphons, or stumbled on some hidden stockpile of air the elites forgot to lock down. But that call never came. Maybe it never existed. So this is it. My last transmission. Unless, and this is the part I almost didn't tell you, unless one last gamble works. There's something the scientists tried to explain before they lost their own air. A trigger, they called it. Not a cure, not salvation. Just a chance to wake the atmosphere back up. A chance to remind the sky how to breathe again. It's untested, probably dangerous. And even if it works, it might only create pockets of air. Small bubbles where you could live for a day, a week, maybe longer if you're lucky. They said the process could already be starting. Tiny places where the air feels thicker. A basement corner, a closet. A stretch of forest ground where the earth remembers how to breathe for itself. It's desperate. But so am I. Stay with me. I'm going to tell you exactly how it works. And if we're lucky, one of us might still be breathing when the sun comes up. Here's what they told me. Or what's left of it. The research team from the Climate Institute sent one last file before they stopped answering. It wasn't an official report. No executive summaries, no polished language meant for press releases, just frantic notes and voice memos, half spoken, half screamed, into whatever recorders they could find before the air left their rooms too. The idea is simple. The Earth remembers how to make air. The atmosphere isn't just empty sky. It's alive, a system that breathes through trees, oceans, soil. Even after the siphons tore it apart, even after the orbital reservoirs drank the sky dry, the planet still knows how to fix itself, if we give it the right signal. They call it atmospheric seeding, a process that triggers emergency oxygen release from places that still hold the memory. Old-growth forests, deep-sea vents, ancient soil layers under ice shelves, places where the air is older than human history. Air that knows how to heal itself because it survived worse. The problem? It requires a spark, a sudden, concentrated burst of pressure and heat, something to shake the memory loose. That's what they've built the towers for. The ones you see on old maps, the ones we called climate beacons. They were meant to pulse signals into the sky. Not messages for people, but messages for the air itself. Most of those towers are offline now, sabotaged, abandoned, or drowned in static. But if even one still works, if someone close enough to one of those towers can force it back to life, there's a chance. Not for the whole world, not for cities or countries, but for pockets. Small, fragile bubbles of breathable air. That's why I'm still broadcasting. Not because I think I can save everyone, but because maybe one of you is near a tower. Maybe one of you remembers where they are. Maybe you worked on them. Maybe you have the key. If you do, this is your moment. This is our moment. If we can trigger even one tower, we give the earth a voice again. We remind the sky how to breathe. I'm almost out of air, but if my last words mean anything, let them be this. Find the tower. Turn it on. If you can hear me, you still have breath. Use it. Before this ends, before the air inside this room runs out completely, I need you to hear them again. Not me. Not scientists or government spokespeople reading scripts they never believed. I mean the real voices. The ones who called when they still had breath to spare. The ones who gave their last air to say one more thing before they disappeared into silence. There was the nurse. You remember her, right? From the ICU. Calling in between trying to bag patients by hand because the ventilators couldn't pull air that wasn't there. She told me about the mothers who gave their oxygen masks to their children even when it wasn't enough, about the patients who asked to hold hands one last time before the room sealed shut. There was the father, the one who called twice. Once to say he was sealing his home, taping every crack, blocking every vent. And once more, just a whisper, to say his daughter had gone quiet, her small hand slipping out of his grip. He stayed on the line after that, not talking, just breathing, until he couldn't anymore. And the child, the one who saw the sky turn off. I keep thinking about that call, about the way they described it so calmly. like flipping a light switch, a shadow hand reaching down, pressing the sky until it stopped. That voice has been stuck in my head ever since, because it sounded less afraid of dying than I am right now. These people, these voices, they didn't vanish. They're still here, filling the silence between my words. And if this really is the last time I speak to you, I want their words to outlive mine, because that's all we are now. Stories held in borrowed air. Every breath you take is someone else's memory. Every word I say is a eulogy for someone who ran out of breath before me. Stay with me, because I'm about to play the sound that started all of this. And it's not what you think. What I'm about to play isn't official. It was never meant to air. It's a recording I found inside the classified files, buried so deep someone wanted it to never surface again. It came from a remote weather station, one of those unmanned sites that checks air pressure, wind speed, atmospheric density, places no one pays attention to unless something breaks. But someone left the recorder running the night. The atmosphere cracked for the first time. You need to know. Oh, this isn't a data log. It's sound. Just sound. And if you think silence has been terrifying, wait until you hear what silence sounds like when it begins. Here's the clip. 15 seconds before the first recorded atmospheric collapse. Listen carefully. It starts with a hum, not machinery, not weather, something between, like metal bending under a weight too heavy to bear. Then the air itself shifts, the pressure falling so fast you can hear the sky loosen, and under all that, there's something else. A voice, maybe, or a reverse echo, like the air was trying to speak backwards as it left. Scientists tried to explain it, called it a harmonic anomaly. But if you listen close, it's not just noise, it's breathing. The atmosphere itself taking a deep breath inward but never exhaling. Just holding, like the sky itself was waiting for permission to let go. They think this was the first rupture, the first tear in the air's skin. They think this is when the siphons opened, when the sky turned from a shield into a drain. But Signal 9 said something else. They said this wasn't the start. This was the sound of something answering. Something that had been listening long before we even knew it was there. I'm going to play the rest. Not because it will save us, but because if we vanish, this sound needs to outlive us. Take a breath, if you still can. Because once you hear this, you'll never trust the silence again. I don't know how much longer I can keep talking. Every word feels heavier, like my lungs are filling with sand instead of air. Each breath comes thinner, stretched so tight it feels like I'm inhaling through a pinhole. The emergency tank is dry now. I'm breathing the scraps, whatever's left in this room. I used to think disasters were something that happened to us. Earthquakes, storms, wildfires. The kind of thing you couldn't stop, couldn't bargain with. But this wasn't a storm. This wasn't fate. We did this. We reached too far. We tried to fix the sky like it was a broken window. And instead, we shattered it. We pulled the air out of our own mouths, bottled it, traded it, treated it like something we could own. And then we built machines, monsters in orbit, that drank the sky like water until the earth itself couldn't remember how to breathe without permission. And we knew. That's the part I can't let go. We knew exactly what we were doing, and we told ourselves the cost wouldn't come due until someone else's lifetime. We thought we had more time to negotiate, time to tweak, time to blame someone else when the final warning came through. But the sky doesn't negotiate. It doesn't wait for press conferences or new elections or climate summits where everyone signs their name and pretends the ink is a cure. The air just left. And now we're here. Me and you, if you're still out there, sitting in rooms too quiet, breathing air too thin, wondering if the next its next inhale will be the one that doesn't come back out. There's no one left to blame. No enemy at the gates, just us. Our hands on the lever, our names on the files, our fingerprints all over the broken sky. I wanted to believe there was some bigger truth. Something cosmic or supernatural or ancient, clawing its way back into the atmosphere. But the truth is smaller than that. Smaller and crueler. We did this to ourselves. And the air remembers. I can't catch my breath. If you can still hear me, if my voice hasn't already slipped beneath the static, please stay with me a little longer. There's something strange happening now. The frequency feels heavier, like the air itself is pressing back against the signal. Every time I try to speak, the static answers first, a crackling whisper filling the spaces between my words. I think this is it. I think the air has decided it's done with us. If you're out there, if anyone is out there, just know this. We could have stopped it. We could have saved the sky if we had just been willing to stop owning it. But we didn't. And now there's only silence. No, wait. There's a sound. Like a breath right on the line, but it's not mine, it's the sky. It's breathing without us. And now, if you're still listening, if this voice somehow reached you through the static, you're now part of the memory. This broadcast, every gasp, every voice, every silence, it's not just a story. It's proof that we were here, that we didn't vanish quietly, that we fought for every breath until the air itself remembered our names. But now I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer. Not for me, for yourself. Do you trust the air you're breathing right now? Think about it. When was the last time you took a breath without wondering what was inside it? When was the last time you trusted the sky? Leave your answer in the comments. And while you're at it, tell me the very first strange thing you noticed, the moment you knew the world was slipping. Was it the taste of the air? A sound no one else heard? Or something much smaller? The way your windows fogged from the inside out? Because stories like this, stories that choke and claw their way out of silence, they're not meant to be kept. They're meant to be shared with the people you love, with the ones who still think the sky is something they can trust. Subscribe if you want more stories like this, stories that breathe back at you, and share this broadcast with someone you care about. Because memories deserve to be carried forward, even if the air can't. This is VoiceCast signing off. If you can still hear me, hold your breath, just to see what the silence feels like. Would you like me to format this into a complete final broadcast document, combining the entire script and this closing?